Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be reviewing this Velar SVA. This is one of the most underrated performance SUVs. Many of you have probably never even heard of this. This is a crazy V8 SUV that is not really all that big. I mean, this is probably about the size of a Jeep Cherokee or a Toyota RAV4, and it's got over 500 horsepower. Before we get into this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Land Rover here in Lehigh for giving me some time with this Velar SVA. I'll include a link to their website in the description down below. If you have any questions, just ask for Bradley. Also include a link to my car buying guide. Let's get into it. Under the hood, we have a supercharged 5-liter V8 that goes through an 8-speed. It produces 550 horsepower and then 502 pound-feet of torque. Before I move forward with this review, I do want to mention if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Now, a quick overview on the Velar. This is Land Rover's smaller Range Rover, is a way that you could put it. Obviously, it has a Range Rover badge on the front end, but it kind of looks like a mini Sport in a lot of ways. I mean, you can see the headlight design. Remember the generation of Sport that existed during this time? It's not the new one, it was the previous one. And then, especially if you look at the side profile, very sleek looking. Again, really looks like a miniature Sport. And if you're wondering in terms of sizing, this thing is roughly the same size as a Toyota RAV4. It might be a little bit bigger, but it's about the same size as a Toyota RAV4, which makes the 550 horsepower even crazier. But of course, you got the two-tone roof, and this had the old generation key fob, which I actually really like. It's held up really well over the years, I think, in terms of style and everything. But yeah, you can see the storage space here. Again, like I said, very similar in size to a RAV4, but of course power with everything, and got fancy taillights. That was one thing that was really cool with the Velar when it first came out, were these cool three-dimensional taillights. But yeah, the exterior of this thing looks great. And then the interior is also really nice as well. You can see really nice materials throughout. I love the kind of stitching pattern there on these seats. Not a ton of leg room. I do have climate controls for the rear passengers, by the way. And then this also had the pop-out door handles. I think this is one of the first Range Rovers to have the pop-out door handles. But we've got soft touch there, and then this is cool with the, looks like carbon fiber trim down below. You can see all the controls here. Again, this is, what, 5 years old at this point? It's 2020. And everything's aged really well. Quickly pop in here. You guys can see it's got 41,000 miles on it, which for a 5-year-old car is actually pretty low. Now you can see the paddle shifters there on the back of the steering wheel. You've got this nice kind of leather trim there. Again, full digital gauge cluster. This is when Land Rover did the double screen setup there with the drive modes and everything. This has adjustable air suspension. Pretty sure it also has a rear locking differential as well. It also has the dial shifter. Yep, when they had the dial back in the day. But yeah, definitely just a cool setup in general in here. And this is where things get crazy. This thing is less than $50,000. When it was brand new, I think it was not quite $100,000, but it was getting pretty darn close to $100,000. That's Land Rover depreciation for you. But I mean, for a 500 horsepower V8 supercharged SUV, that is pretty darn good. So let's take it out and drive it. Man, I feel like I'm too big for this thing. I can't, the seat won't go back any further, but I feel like I'm still too close to everything. Anyways, let's see how this performs. This is a really cool vehicle. I actually had a chance to review one of these brand new, and the thing that I'll say is when I first got into reviewing cars, I knew somewhat about cars, but I obviously, you know, over time, right, as you do a job, you learn more and more. There are a lot of really special cars that I was able to review, and I had no clue. Like, I literally just looked at it as like just another day in the office. Like, Velar SVA is an example. I remember I just went in and I go, I looked at like their inventory and I go, oh look, there's a Velar with a V8. That's nothing special. Okay, I'm like, I'll just film that for today because I haven't filmed one of those. That was literally my mentality. Another example, this is gonna make some of you guys probably upset. The Lexus GSF. that they no longer make. That was another one, the same thing. I just went in and I go, oh, it's an old Lexus, but it's technically a brand new car, so like I'll just go review it. V8 Lexus, I'm like, whatever. So, yeah, crucify me. Anyways, Land Rovers, although they can have some issues, if they are fully serviced like this thing, man, do they age really well. The looks, I think, just, I don't know, they always look good in my personal take. I know some of you might disagree with that, but I think they always look good. And then the interiors, I mean, you can see like there's a little bit of like wear and everything on the steering wheel, but it's very, very minimal. So everything just still looks and feels really nice. And again, 40,000 miles isn't the highest amount of mileage, but that's something, right? And so it's just impressive. These things actually, they do hold up well with the interiors and the exterior, I'd say. The problem is, you know, like most British cars, it's the electronics, right? We all know that. But man, this thing drives so well. The air suspension definitely helps out with the ride quality. Yeah, super, super smooth. Yeah, and the turn-in's great too. This thing is so small. That's why I think this car is, again, I didn't realize this at the time, but that's why I think this car today is so cool, because you have a vehicle that, again, you look at like Jeep Cherokee, I think it's about the same size as a Jeep Cherokee roughly. You look at vehicles that are this size, and most of them are going to be putting out like, you know, I don't know, 200 to 300 horsepower, right? And a lot of them will have 4 cylinders. And, you know, I understand the other luxury automakers have high-performance SUVs in this size category, like a Porsche Macan, for example. But this thing not only has power, like you can get with a Porsche Macan, but it has a V8 too. That's cool, and a supercharged V8 at that. Like, this is, in my opinion, why did the music just come on? I think I accidentally pressed yeah. Anyways, this, in my opinion, is like Land Rover's Hellcat, where Hellcat moment, I should say. Oh, so what I mean by that is they have put a crazy performance engine in a vehicle that doesn't need. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and that's why it's their Hellcat moment. Is, I remember when Jeep unveiled the Trackhawk, it's like, why? And then they did the Durango Hellcat, and it's like, why? Like, that is completely unnecessary, but it's awesome that you made it. And that's kind of what this Velar SVA is it's completely unnecessary. You do not need 500 horsepower in a vehicle this small, but it has it, and it's got a supercharged V8 at that, and it's really, really cool. But yeah, it drives like a Range Rover, right? It's not as comfortable as the new stuff on the suspension. The new air suspension's a lot more plush overall, but this does a really good job. And it's got some power. It'll throw you back in your seat. It's a fun car, and it sounds great. Why did I do eco? We don't need eco mode. We need ego mode in this. But either way, let me know what you guys think about the Velar SVA, but I think this thing is a gem. And you know, here's the deal about this car. Like I said, I've reviewed older Land Rovers. The interiors hold up really well. The exterior holds up really well. The engines are actually pretty darn reliable, at least for these like supercharged V8 versions. So you don't have to worry about that stuff in terms of that degrading over time. It's just the electronics you could have some issues, right? That's the Land Rover thing, and it can get expensive. And the air suspension, that's something that you also kind of worry about with a Land Rover long term. But I mean, you know, people have Land Rovers that are now like over 20 years old on original air suspension, still running strong. So I'm not saying just go out and buy a super used old Land Rover. This isn't that old though. This isn't that used. But these things can actually do pretty well. They are going to require more maintenance than your regular run-of-the-mill vehicle. So just kind of understand that as you're going in. So let me know what you guys think about the Velar SVA. But I think this is a really special car, and I think it's super underrated. And I think that this is one of those things that car enthusiasts will remember for years to come, in terms of just being like, why? Like, why do they do that? I'm glad they did that, but why do they do that?